Boy, I tell you what, you don't see these too often, at least not in my neck of the woods. And I thought maybe, that was just a sticker or something. But you can clearly see this is an OEM XPW 51.4 millimeter top end. Customer states won't run, and I think the face says it all. So here's how I go through my diagnostics. I checked the fuel. I did pressure test while I had the fuel filter off. I just want to make sure that it wasn't too badly obstructed. I did pressure test just to make sure there wasn't a crack in the fuel line. I mean, I don't know what year this is, but it's, let's see what we got here. A little bit of light on the subject. This is a 2016. All right. So she'd been around the block a little bit. Been a couple of cutesy repairs. Yeah, let's get that out of the way. Yeah, that won't wiggle out now, will it? Just typical. Limiters have been removed off of it at some point in time. But I did pressurize it, and I'm leaking down. I pressurized the fuel line. So I was like, okay, so we can eliminate the fuel line from the equation. Let's hook up directly to the fuel inlet. Stick on there. And come over here to our little miracle maker. And down she goes. So we're not sealing. So I'm going to hang it out there and say that the reason why it won't run is because this carb is bleeding fuel into the cylinder. A couple of things, at first I just made sure we had spark, made sure that we weren't scored. You always want to look on like this corner right here. This would be the first place. You're an air-cooled engine, so your flywheel is your cooling fan. So this side stays cooler than this side. So your first signs of scoring are going to be on this right-hand corner by the exhaust. But cylinder looks fine, nothing hurt. And let's pull this carb apart and have a look inside and see what's up. All right, here's what you get with your kit. The pin for the metering lever, a new needle, screen, diaphragm side, pump side. These three are identical. They're just, this one's thinner. You got a paper gasket and a little bit thicker paper gasket. Now, what didn't come in here was another spring. So we'll have to take this spring and put it with this kit. I'm not going to get too terribly in depth. If somebody wants me to see like how you put this all back together, but let me just put it together and I'll show you what we're going to do to make sure that your kit is properly installed. Obviously this is going to have to be oriented correctly. And it's kind of, I'm not going to say idiot proof, but, this side is, you get a little something right there. That tab goes on that tab that's outside. The cover doesn't match it. And then your gasket goes on top of that. And then these seams or ridges right there will help make a good seal. You see how there's that raised outline, and that's what helps pinch down and keep all the compartments separate from from one another. And then the only thing to remember on this side is that the you'll have, see, that's not right, this way. You get these raised dimples right here that locates it, and now all your bolt holes, or your screw holes line up. But we're going to put in this metering lever and check the height of it. I've had the last several kits I've had, this is sticking up too far, and I've had to make just a gentle adjustment to this to make sure that it is just below flush. And just as I suspected, that right there is I mean, I don't even need to use my straight edge. Whoops. Oh gosh. To go on there. This is hard to do looking through the camera. Here, let me set this down and see if I can't get you better. Thanks for sticking with me. All right. You know, maybe you don't want to learn how to build a carburetor, but you do need to know how to do it properly if you ever decide to jump off that bridge. So what we're not seeing there is daylight. So if you're really careful, you can get underneath here, hold that metering arm steady because you don't want to bend this end of it. Okay. You can either take this out and put some pressure on just this side, but if I don't support it right here and then just bend this part of the arm, like I can actually, you'll hear a little click from where it's bending, but that way I don't change the angle of that fork that actually moves your needle. Okay, so let me come back and take a look at this. Nope, still touching. There we go, just a whisper of daylight. Hold still. See what I'm talking about? You don't want it too low, but just some daylight in between that and your straight edge. Now, because you understand why we're double checking this. This is like the most important part right here. Because, you know, with this new supple diaphragm, you know, maybe the spring pressure is enough to fight this back, but as it stiffens up, it's actually going to put just the slightest amount of pressure on that arm, and you're going to start weeping fuel into the cylinder. So you'll end up with a flooded saw even when it's not running. I don't think you need to see the rest of this. I'm just going to put a couple of screws in here, and then I'll flip it over and show you the other side. And like I said, don't forget, you want to put the gasket down first on the diaphragm side, and then on the pump side, the gasket itself is going to be what goes on top. And you'll remember that by just, you know, looking at this cover right here and seeing those raised areas. That's to pinch. Here's a handy dandy trick. In order to get, make sure we got you centered up. Now you actually have to press that in there. If you've got a quarter inch bit driver for your impact or a hand tool, if you can center that up, and that'll support most of it. Come back here, you. Always hard to do this live. Boy, I'll tell you what, don't drink coffee before you do this. You'd be surprised. I mean, because you're dealing with such lightweight little knickknacks. And see how that just rolled right in there? I'm just going to make sure that that's seated and flushed. And then, again, when you put that on, you want to look for things that line up. And any carburetor is going to do this. What we got? So these little flappers right here and right here are going to be over a hole. Here's your alignment pins for the cover. Make sure those are there. And that everything just looks like it's supposed to. I mean, they leave you a couple of clues along the way. I'm going to use the medium thickness one on this. And then when you put this top cover on, you know, just we'll make sure. Well, you'll only be able to put it on there one way. It'll actually drop right down. And you'll want to snug this down pretty good. You know, most of the time, you know, a little bit. But you have to remember, this gasket is going to compress over time. So I actually really, not as hard as I can, but make sure that's in there pretty good. I'll pressure test this, stick it back on the carb on the saw and make sure that we're ready to pull the cord.
Well, I can't get it to idle down.
Some of you might have seen this in the background of my shop. And there's a problem with this because this is not my shop list. Just a good friend of mine gave me this to hang up in the shop for something funny. So shop price, this is $65 an hour, $85 if you touched it, $95 if you watch, and $120 if you offer advice. Now, whoever made this sign doesn't work on this kind of shit. The if you touched it needs to be down here. Look, if you're a Husky owner, just close your ears. But if you know where I'm getting ready to go with this, you know what I'm talking about. You know, we started off with this monkey nut shit with the piece of wire holding the choke rod. Just get you a new $7 choke rod. Got the wrong bolts on everything because you don't check your shit because you know they're going to rattle out. Muffler. So you bought you a cute muffler because you probably let the other one rattle apart. So I'm trying to do a pressure and vacuum test on this thing, and the bolts that are in there, wait a minute, where are they? Oh, like this. It's like half the length they're supposed to be. How in the hell, anyway, so now I have to dig through all of this right here to find some screws for your freaking saw. Just trying to get a simple vacuum and pressure test done. And another thing, does that say? I know you can read upside down. There, you see that gap? Here, we'll jam a 12mm on there. I think that's what it is. Get this out. Of course, it's all rounded over because, well, you used the wrong. You probably used a set of vice grips. Okay, that had to be the longest vacuum and pressure test I've ever done in my freaking life. So, you know, just can't get anything going. So the blue right there, that's an OEM seal. Well, I didn't have any top end leaks up here. I didn't have any problems with my base gasket. You know, these are kind of known to shrivel up over the years and you end up with a leak over here. That's why I was spraying some brake clean up against there. But the boot's fine. You know, the other side's fine. Finally got that blocked off. And we come around to here. Now, you know, if you notice, here, let me kind of pan back and see what kind of disaster. So if everybody ever charges you for a pressure and vacuum test, there's shit everywhere. So, do this and prime my and I'll take you in a little closer when you start to. So she's leaking like a sieve. I'll make sure that's all the way down. This is a sleeve that's on the crankshaft. It doesn't seem to be leaking anywhere but right there. You know, I can rotate this and it still leaks right there. So if you look at this, that's a black seal. That's an aftermarket seal. I mean, you know, I don't think anybody's been through this. But if you're going to go through all this for this kind of nonsense, I've got every tool imaginable out here just because, well, A, it's a Husky, and B, all the fasteners that fell out have been replaced with other fasteners. So I've got Torx bit, 3mm, 4mm, 5mm, 13mm, 12mm, 5/16. So yeah, there was a 5/16 bolt over here on the front. Oh yeah, some nice JB weld down here. Whatever, I'm freaking over it. All right, so I got a new seal installed. I don't know if you can hear this or not. Hold on. So now we're actually able to make a little tiny bit of pressure. Oh wait, what's that? Oh, see if we can hear that again. There's a little faint whispering of air escaping. Here, let's check everything else. Here, let me set you down and I'll find this leak. All right, leak number 2. Let me see if I can get a little bit more specific right there. Looks like, that is coming from the underside of the boot, maybe? Jesus Christ. All right, quickie degrease. We got the top end off. When I leaned on the intake boot, it was leaking from down here. I cleaned up this boot, did a visual inspection on it, put it back on. I'm going to reseal this. Yeah, folks, if you're going to do some port work, make sure you chamfer. I mean, there's absolutely no chamfering there. I mean, it's all, you know, this is just a little woods port job. But, you know, this was resealed with something black. And what little bit of port work was done here, you know, you just got to remember, every time you ding up this machine surface right here, your chances of sealing get worse. And especially, you know, if you have this kind of damage, you know, I was able to wipe off with just a towel all of the gasket maker that was on there. Nothing was really bonded worth a shit. Here I am letting out air again. I know what you're thinking. That's an awful lot of fasteners. If I couldn't be any more unfucking hinged today, yeah, a couple things. You know, so I couldn't get this seal to seal perfectly. Still had a slow air leak in it. And, you know, I couldn't feel any play in the crankshaft. But then I rotated a little bit, and it must have been bound on something or whatever. But, you know, that's not supposed to happen. Yeah, some milky shit here because I hosed everything off. But the bearing pocket is just, and all right, so I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. You know, somebody's been in here before because that's wrong. That goes on the inside of the case, not the outside of the case. Anyway, so there's what it's like working after some hack. So what else we got? So all that's in the box. That's for shit. So HL Supply is going to send me a crankcase. It's a Farmer Tech. Everybody get the panties in a bunch. I'm still going to use the OEM crank, notchy bearings, and then we won't have any more of this because when I took the top cover loose, you see how that's all dirty and everything right there. When I unbolted the top cover, well, you know, that's was the only thing holding this in place. So, yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, this piston and cylinder right here, that 51.4 millimeter unavailable hen's teeth, I mean, that's, I've seen people selling it for like $400, $500 for a top end. So, that's where we're at. I started this adventure at 1 o'clock today. I did have somebody come in to pick up some stuff. We chit-chatted for about half an hour. It's pushing 6 o'clock right now. This was a fan-freaking-tastic way to just shorten my life. Y'all wonder where I get this damn gray hair from.